The LSAT, the law school admission test, is getting a new writing section, and it's changing in August 2024. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it, because there's been so much talk about the fact that the logic game section is going away. The June 2024 LSAT exam is the last LSAT exam that has the logic game section. And most people, that's all that they're listening to. That's all that they're talking about. That's all that they're caring about. But you should care about the fact that there's also a new writing section coming in August 2024. And what does that look like? And how do you prepare for that? For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery. I am the founder and executive director here at Barrier Breakers. We're a nonprofit that specializes in working with first generation, minority, and immigrant college and law school applicants, with a special focus, of course, on law school applicants. And we specialize in admissions advising. We also do a little career placement down the line. So if you are in law school, we have lots of resources for you. We have partners that we're developing with law firms and different employment organizations, but we don't do LSAT prep. We have amazing partners that we work with, and one of those is here with us today. I am so thrilled that we have Mena Pirone here today. Mena is amazing, amazing. If you don't know her, you are living under a rock and you need to know her. She's also a very good friend. She is also a professional LSAT tutor. She went to Harvard Law School. She has been tutoring the LSAT full time professionally for over 15 years, and her company, LSAT Logic Pro, focuses on logical reasoning and specializes in using unique techniques to help people who have been studying for a while, for a little bit, who maybe have hit a wall with their scores. She's got some specialized and unique techniques that really help students overcome that hump and get past the blockage and the plateau with their scores so that they can really soar. Mena, it's so great to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sydney. It is always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, of course, for having me on. And you're right, there are some major changes coming to the LSAT that will begin in August 2024. The big one that everyone's talking about is the changes to the logic game section, like you said, and for good reason. That is an enormous change. It's basically restructuring the way the LSAT has been done since the beginning. Um, the major thing is, whereas logical reasoning used to be 1/3 of your actual score, now it's going to be 2/3 of your score. So logic games is gone, logical reasoning doubles in importance. This completely changes how people should be preparing, what they should care about, what resources they should use. So I completely understand that people are talking about and freaking out about the logic games disappearing. But I think it's important for people to also recognize that there's also going to be a change to the writing section, which also begins with the August 2024 LSAT administration. So essentially, if I were to, distill it down to its most essential components, they are changing it from the LSAT writing sample to LSAT argumentative writing, which sounds a lot more formal and structured, and in all honesty, it is. So it used to be that people sort of put LSAT writing on the back burner because it's an unscored section of the test. It's something that you do, on a different day than you're taking the test, and it's very rushed. But now they've sort of changed the format of it, which I think is going to make it much more important as far as what you include in your writing sample, how important it's going to be to admissions committees. So it now really has become something that you should pay attention to and give proper respect to. It's going to be important going forward, in my opinion. That being said, we don't know much about what's actually going to be presented to you on the test. LSAC, the organization that administers the LSAT, they've only given one example of this new format. It consists of a debatable concept. So, there's something where, imagine if you're ever on the debate team, it's something where you could argue for either side, and there's going to be intellectual, well founded arguments for both sides, but you need to pick one side. That might sound familiar to how it always used to be. Here's what's different. A, they're going to give you four little perspectives. So these are going to be one paragraph, maybe two paragraphs from different sources. Like in the example we have, they give a source from a career advice blog, and there's a source that's from a school's brochure, one from an academic journal or a sociology textbook that are arguing for the pro side or the con side. So you're intended to take at least one, they say at least one, but I recommend two of these sources and use them to formulate your argument for or against one side or the other of the debate. You can, though, now include your personal opinion, your personal experience, your values, things that have happened to you or to friends, if you know what I mean. You can now be far more creative and free in how you approach these topics. It used to be a very structured type of assignment. And now that it's become something where you can really shine, it's going to be something that I think law schools are really looking at, whereas before it was something sort of perfunctory, it was just required, and they didn't much care about it. Now I think it's going to be important.
So I have a couple of thoughts, concerns, questions about this. One of my biggest thoughts is that we're living in a time that is much more polarized than we were when I was taking standardized tests. At least I'll say that for certain. And students, I think, they like to think about their reasoned arguments, because I think a lot of times you give a student an argument and you tell them to go, especially if it's something that they may feel emotional about. Their first thoughts might not be their best thoughts, right? And so just being very honest. um,
That is very true.
I can see there being some risk of students bringing themselves into the argument, and they should bring themselves into the argument, but there is a risk that students will do so in ways that might not be the best reflection of themselves as a future law student. And when you have these things like different perspectives, I'm the English major, right? And so I remember going from in high school where I'm just reporting on what the author says, to in college where I'm supposed to challenge and critique the author and put
Right.
myself in the. And I was like, what do you mean critique the author? They're an author, they're a scholar. I am a plebe, I am nobody, I am a child. I was very uncomfortable with this entire concept when I learned it. Like, how dare I critique an author? But when we're bringing our own perspectives and things in, there is a line between just kind of going on a rant and still having a scholarly argument and bringing in perspectives. So, how do you see that being a potential problem, a potential area for risk with these essays?
Yeah, so that is a fantastic question because you're absolutely right. They are asking you to defend a side of a debate where there may very well be very strong feelings one way or the other. For example, the only prompt that they've given us is one where I could absolutely see people having strong feelings one way or the other. It's about the ultimate goal of college. So the only prompt they've given us has to do with whether the goal of college should be to train people for technical skills to prepare them for specific jobs in the future, or should the purpose be a more broad based sort of liberal arts, preparing someone to be a well rounded citizen who can think logically and critically about a multitude of issues. And you can imagine that there are people on both sides who are very adamant that their side is correct. So, it's good if you feel like you strongly fall on one side or the other. That's probably going to result in a better essay. But you do have to be careful. You never know if the person reading your essay from the admissions committee falls on the other side of the debate. So I think you will have to make sure that your position is made clear. That is of utmost importance. If your position isn't clear by the time the person gets to the second paragraph, you failed. Okay, right off the bat, you do need to make your position clear. However, I think it is very important that you remain respectful. Part of a good essay is talking about the other side, conceding points that might be good points from the other side. Now, how do you talk about the other side when it's a side you don't agree with? One of the things I think is going to be really important in these essays is transition words. Now, I know that sounds completely random,
No,
but
it's my favorite.
Okay, so yeah, you are the queen of essays. So like you can't just jump into a new sentence and not give people an indication of where you're going. So just to make a structurally sound essay, it makes sense to use transition words. But what I mean is, this is not confirmed, it is not substantiated, it is just my suspicion, but the suspicion is founded on things that I have seen. Um, it is very likely that the upcoming essays will be, if not in whole, in part graded by AI. It's just considering the volume, considering the technology that's available and how good the technology is getting, there probably will be at least one AI reader. This has been the suspicion, to be honest, for other standardized tests that have a writing portion, like the ACT and the GMAT. And one of the things that AI looks for is transition words. So when you start off your essay, you're going to need to obviously present your side. You're going to need to support and develop your side. I would probably, okay, here's a good thing. The overused word is like moreover. That's the one I see people reuse when they're like adding support to their side, developing their side. They say moreover, blah, 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 blah. That's overused. Consider different transition words because that's going to, if it's an AI reader and even if it's a human reader, these are going to get you, a slightly better score, a
Do people
slightly
use
better.
moreover more than however? I just want to know. I mean, the English major
Oh,
in me is loving this conversation. It's getting
they are
spicy.
probably equal. They're probably equal. And like,
furthermore,
yeah,
furthermore,
and furthermore, yeah. So you're going to want to start thinking about your transition words.
people are
Like,
like,
this
Sydney,
is
those are the
something that,
only three words I know. Moreover, however, and
right. So
furthermore. What else is there?
instead of moreover, as you're supporting your argument, right? Similarly, accordingly, equally important. Likewise, okay, start thinking about
Mm,
synonyms because I think these are going to be important.
yes,
Now, let's get to the meat because you're going to need to introduce the opposing opinion.
yes.
You're going to have to present what they
On
think.
the other
And
hand,
yeah, exactly. So I think the most overused phrase when people start to introduce the other side is on the other hand and
yes.
although. Okay, so
Because what else do you
some
say except
synonyms.
on the other
No, there are
hand?
plenty of things. So I would say once you start introducing the opposing opinion, I like conversely,
Mm,
in contrast.
mm,
And then as you're starting to really dig into why people support the other side, this is where, so this circles back, this is where you need to be diplomatic.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is where you can't act like, and those idiots say, because you never know who's going to
yeah,
be reading your essay.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
good words I think you can use when you're talking about the other side are words like understandably,
yeah.
admittedly, or like granted.
I
You
love,
want to be as diplomatic as possible while still
yeah.
saying, I don't agree.
I love a good transition phrase in this way.
Mm,
So while it is important that this, it can also be said that this. While
exactly.
I do think that this, scholars have also said this, or
Yep.
this particular perspective that pulls in this makes great points about this, that while I don't fully agree, can see it working in certain circumstances. That is not a
Yeah.
transitional phrase, if you will, but
No, you're absolutely
it's
right. Transitional phrases even better than transitional words.
yeah,
Though
yeah.
I would caution students to make sure they're varying their transitional
Yes,
phrases because
yes,
I have seen plenty of essays that are although blah blah blah, comma, blah blah blah. Although blah blah blah, comma, blah blah blah, though blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the same
yeah.
structure over and
I
over.
think you get
So
to
you're
use it
definitely,
twice and not back to back.
oh, that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah,
I like
like
that.
I
Use it
just
twice, not
sprinkle,
back to back.
not back to back. If you cannot use the same phrase back to back, that is one of my. That's just such an easy scannable thing, right? If I've started a sentence this way, my next sentence can't start the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And whether it's a human reader or an AI reader, both will appreciate. I'm going to put that in quotes because can AI appreciate? Maybe. That's not for me to say. Both will appreciate essays that have varied sentence structure.
Yes.
So, your big three things as you're crafting this new type of essay: organization. What that boils down to is sentences. Please don't submit a block of text.
Mm.
Multiple sentences, I would say 5 to 7, and you do have more time than you had before. So this is one of the changes I didn't get to mention earlier, but previously you had 35 minutes to both think, draft, construct, and submit. 35 minutes total from the moment you laid eyes on the issue. Now it's a little bit different. Now they let you think about and write notes, digital notes. You still don't have pen and paper, but they give you some space to, sort of type out your notes. You have minimum 5, maximum 15 minutes to do your thinking and your note taking. Now I say minimum 5, maximum 15 because after 15 minutes, they shift you over to the real essay portion. You'll still be able to see your notes. They're available for you, but you can't type on them anymore. You're typing your real essay now. After 15 minutes, it's mandatory. You shift over. However, you don't have to take the entire 15 minutes. If you feel like you got your notes down, you're ready, I want to start writing, you can click, I would like to start writing my essay. That button, though, is only going to be available after 5 minutes. So they require you to take 5 minutes at least to think about it, maximum 15. Once that's done and you start the essay writing portion, then you have an entire 35 minutes. So what used to be the entirety of the whole process is now just for writing. So you've got plenty of time, to develop good arguments. If you can fit in 7 paragraphs, I would say that's probably optimal, but anything less than 4 would be suboptimal. Would you agree with that?
I think, I mean, listen, let's start with a good basic 5 paragraph essay,
Yeah,
right? Because you really can't go wrong. Like it's so basic, but like it's like okay, it's basic, but it's still good. Like all right,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like let's just start there.
yeah. I'd
You
say
can
that's
write an essay.
5,
Yeah,
5 paragraphs,
yeah.
and it's unfortunately it is going to be the more you can write, the better it is perceived.
And I think we should
Obviously,
talk
that
about
doesn't
what
mean
a
the better it is.
yes, and let's talk about what a paragraph is, right? Like a paragraph is not
Mm.
2 sentences. That's not a paragraph. It is not one sentence. I am a big believer in 5 sentences makes a paragraph essay, right? Five
Oh,
sentences
that's
to a paragraph.
interesting. I would have said 3 minimum or 4. Now, obviously, 5 is
Yeah.
fine. As long as each paragraph is one independent, concrete thought, that's fine. But I noticed that it's more dangerous for a person to have paragraphs that are too long than too short. I
This
don't
is
see
true.
too short as often as I see too long. Break it up.
So I don't like paragraphs that are too short because I feel like they're underdeveloped thought. So
So
if
this
you
really is.
yes, I it is very subjective, right? But I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
like okay, a paragraph should start with some sort of topic sentence, and there should probably be some sort of ending sentence. So like your meat should probably be more than one sentence. So
Yeah.
I'll give you 4 sentences, right? Okay, we have an intro, we've got 2 meats, we have a closing. But I mean, I really think like yeah, you can give me 3 because okay, I'm gonna get really picky. I'm just gonna get really picky.
No, please.
But
Absolutely. This is fantastic.
and this is why actually I would say take all 15 minutes to plan, right? Because
Yeah. Oh, I
you can
completely agree.
because you should outline. I mean, listen
Yep.
on my tombstone. I think they're gonna write here lies Sydney, she loves a good outline. Like, or did you outline my eulogy? Like, I think might be a question that is there because I just think like if you don't have an outline, you can't write anything coherently. You can't give a coherent speech. You can't. Everything that I do, everything that I speak, everything that I start, it all starts with an outline, right? And so the 15 minutes is your time to outline, and it's so
Yep.
important. And when you're outlining, then you can do some outlining, right? Like you've got your, if you have not watched any of my videos, I believe in outlining having full sentences, right? Like, so a full sentence, that way you can listen and see the transition in between your main
Yep.
points, okay? Right? Like
Yep.
each of your Roman numerals needs to be a full sentence that embeds a transition. So it makes sense. But then you have your details underneath, and you're like, Sydney, I've only got 15 minutes. You can do it, I promise you.
Yeah.
You have your details underneath. And so, if you have you have your main point, right? Roses are red, or in the college transition, right? Like maybe college is great not just for a job, but to teach you how to think. Like maybe that's my first point. It teaches
Sure.
you how to think. And then okay, that's my main. I have to have like maybe 2 reasons why I think that because I think that makes a strong paragraph. So again, we have more than 3 sentences. it teaches you how to think, and these are the three reasons why it teaches you how to think. Moving on. Next, it exposes you to different kinds of people, so it expands your perspective. And three example, and maybe this is now I'm bringing in my personal example, right? So maybe my first one, I brought in a perspective from those like four perspectives, and maybe my second point, I'm bringing in a personal story. A story is more than one sentence, so I'm bringing in my personal story, and this is how I got exposed to people and saw me different things. And in my third point, I'm going to say, it teaches you resilience and failure. And so, maybe I'm bringing in one of those perspectives, or again, I am bringing in a personal story, but I've outlined it, right? Like, this is, and then conclusion, right? Like these three things go beyond just the classroom, right? College is really that learning period between 18 and 22 where you're developing as a person because you've now learned all these things through my two stories and the perspectives that I brought in.
Guys, pay attention. Using the prompt that you have access to, that's a perfect essay. Okay, so go read the prompt and then
give
rewatch
me
that.
give me a
That's how you
prompt.
write a
I'll do
perfect
it.
essay.
I'll do
That's it.
it.
But so here's the thing. I think when it comes down to it, we're sort of saying the same thing. Each paragraph, okay, this is going to be weird. Each paragraph is a sandwich. You got your bread, intro,
Absolutely.
you got your bread, outro. And it's kind of a boring sandwich if you only have one piece of meat in there. You need some meat and some cheese and some lettuce. Now, it can get overwhelming. You have too much in there and you can't put it in your mouth. Am I taking this analogy too far? I think I am.
No, no, no. It's
But you,
perfect. It's
but it makes
perfect.
sense, I think, where it's like, look, you're going to have your intro and outro. What you put between is critical. It can't be too little, but there's also a danger of it being too much. In my
Yeah.
opinion, paragraphs can be too much. So it's all about finding that sweet spot. What kind of sandwich would you like to eat? A piece
I
of
think
meat, a piece of cheese, maybe a little garnish, and
I'm
we'll
gonna
move
t-
on to the next sandwich.
I'm gonna take your analogy even further, right?
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So here's the analogy that I'm gonna take for you. Your essay is like a row of sliders. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, so
multiple
there are
sandwiches.
many, yes, there are multiple sandwiches, right? And you don't, but like you want to get to all the sliders. And you need, so each slider, you don't want a slider that's just bread. That's silly. It has to have some substance. I want to give a little something, but also like you don't want to overwhelm it so that you don't have time to get to the third slider. And that's very sad, right? You don't want to overpower any of the other sliders. Like all the sliders should work together because if they're too crazy, then it's not a good meal.
You know what? This might be a perfect analogy. The slider sandwich analogy to writing essays. So, obviously, any kind of essay you need to write, this is going to be your foundation. This is the basic format, and it is absolutely applicable to this new format of LSAT writing or LSAT argumentative writing. Um, Now, this is very different to how it was before, because before they gave you sort of a hypothetical person who was trying to decide between two options, but they were very static options. Should I open a brew pub or should I open a brewery? Should I take this construction project that is bigger and riskier but would give me a better reputation, or should I take this construction project that's smaller and safer, but I wouldn't be well known for it? Like it's these very sort of dichotomous things that don't have a lot of nuance. And your job then was to argue for one, which it still is, but it was so much easier to do so that you could formulaically sort of develop an essay. Now that they're asking you to introduce your own opinions, your own experiences, um, you've got a lot more you can do with this. So, one thing, a little bit controversial, but one thing is, since they want you to introduce your own experiences and your own personality and what what you have experienced, um, you could make things up. This is not a fact-based essay. This is not an essay where, A, they're going to fact check you. It's not an essay where you're being tested on how well you can introduce facts into your narrative. Instead, this is an essay that is trying to see how um, how well you can argue for a point. So, technically, now, look, this might be risky, but I actually don't think it is. It didn't actually have to happen to you. But if it advances your point, then That's what they're looking for. Can you advance the narrative? Or maybe it happened to a friend of yours, but it didn't really happen to a friend of yours. One crazy thing I've seen, now I'm not going to say I'm advocating this, but I just want you guys to know what are the differences? How are you supposed to approach this test? Someone said, and I won't say who, you can make up statistics because they're not fact checking. It's not about the facts, it's about can you present your argument in a compelling way. Now, obviously, you don't want to make up any statistics that are obviously ridiculous, but it's not a fact based essay. So, those are just some things, take them with a grain of salt, but these are some things that never would have occurred in the previous format of the essay. So, these are some things that you might be able to play with. Think about them, think about how much risk you want to take, how creative you want to be, but there is a lot more opportunity for creativity in
I
this
will
essay.
say, I feel
Yeah.
like it would be risky to use the wrong statistic because even though they're not quite fact checking, I can see myself. I'm not an
Mm.
admissions dean, but I can see myself being like, "Oh my god, did you know that thing?" And then
Right. That's
and then
why that's
and then
why
googling it, right? Like being
that's why
like,
I distanced
"Wow,
myself from that one.
look at this
I've
thing
heard
that
it
I
said,
heard."
and I think it's interesting. So I just want to present, with the appropriate caveats
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it might
very
be an
comfortable.
option that's open to you now. Consider it, reject it if you want, but it's good to just know all of the creative freedom that you now have.
That
Um,
is interesting.
One other thing I want to make sure we get on record
Yeah.
is I think that admissions committees are going to be reading these essays now. So I mentioned previously how people used to put LSAT writing on the back burner. It was like, I'll do it at some point, and you had to do it then, you have to do it now. It is required. You will not get your LSAT score back if you haven't submitted your writing sample. So it's still required. It's still going to be sent to every law school you apply to. Those things are still the same. But I think there is a very critical difference now, and law schools are actually going to be reading these essays now for a couple of reasons. First, because you get more time to do it. So it's not this like rushed afterthought thing it used to be. It's now you had 15 minutes to think about this. You've had 35 minutes to write this. I feel like they're going to be now considering it a more representative demonstration of your capabilities. Second, it's new. So anything new is curious. You kind of want to see, like, oh, how is this going to play out? Moreover, they are thinking of making this a graded part of the test. So, I think schools are going to be reading these essays with a mind toward what if this was graded? How would I sort of incorporate that into the rest of the application? And the third, and I think most important thing is unlike your personal statement, your diversity statement, for example, or any of the other addenda, there is absolutely no chance you can use AI to help you write this essay. You can't use AI because this is proctored through your screen. While you're writing, the webcam is recording you. You can't use AI. You can't use Grammarly. You can't use a thesaurus. I think there will be a basic spell check. I don't have that confirmed, but I think there will be. But a lot of the other tools that we tend to rely on when we're writing essays, they're not going to be available for you. So it will be a very transparent view of what you're capable of. Can you imagine if you were on a law school admissions committee? That would be very interesting to see. I'd start comparing someone's personal statement with their argumentative writing sample, knowing it's not going to be as good. Obviously, your personal statement you've spent weeks on, especially if you've gone through Sydney's program, you have honed that for weeks. So obviously, they know it's not going to be as good. But if it sounds like two completely different people, that's going to be important to them. So I think
Yeah.
when you write this essay, give it more import. You now have a really good chance that it's going to be read, it's going to be passed around and read by multiple people in the committee, and it's going to have an impact on your admissions chances.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. First off, I think probably some people are listening to this and hearing there's no Grammarly. Which is what does writing look like without Grammarly?
Yeah,
Shaking in their boots. But grammar is important, and a book. Like I feel like so much of my English majorness is coming out today,
I knew
deep
it
in
would.
there. Yeah, yeah, deep. It's deep in there. But I think it's really important because I do think there are going to be questions about the difference between their argumentative writing sample and their personal statement, and how concerned should they be with major differences, how concerned should they be if they get help with their personal statement and their, their other writings if it's different. One of the things that we try to do here at Barrier Breakers is actually teach grammar. And
Mm.
I can tell if you don't actually know the difference between passive and active voice in your essays. And so can all of our admissions advisors. And that is something that we bring up, right? I mean, I think that's I always say that the work that we do is not transactional. I've had students where it's like, you don't know how to write. Lovingly, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
this is not your strength. But friend, let's fix this before you get to law school. Because for me and all of our advisors, we know that you're going to law school in the fall. And if I'm seeing something that is deeply flawed in just your understanding of writing, for stuff, I'm not judging you. It might have been 20 years since you wrote something. You might have been failed by your college professors. Like, you know what? This is a judgment free zone. But I think it's a responsibility that I have to tell you if I see something that, sometimes you just need a little correction, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being, this is gonna sound silly, but I remember being so afraid of commas. Like I just like didn't understand them. I just like didn't know where you put
That's
them.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I
I
just didn't get
overuse
them.
commas.
Oh, I think I avoided them for a solid, like, I think my freshman year of college, I was just like, I don't understand. Because it was just like, everyone was like, you're a great writer, Sydney, da 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 da. I got to Princeton, and like the writing was different. And I just remember being like, oh, I don't really know when to use this, so I'm just not going to.
And so, fair enough, these are the little things that people can actually brush up on because you know that's going to be an issue when you start writing this essay, and you know you're not going to be able to look it up during the essay. No one's going to help you. No little paper clip is going to pop up. I was probably aging myself there
I was
with
like,
the
I know
paper
the
clip
paperclip, but
reference.
no
You know
one
the
knows.
paper.
I know the little paperclip dude, but I don't know. I don't know if the people listening
So
know the
when you used to
paperclip.
write an essay way back in Microsoft Word, a paper clip, a little animated paper clip would show up to help you with
It
your
was so
grammar and
cute.
structure. Okay, you're not going to have that. Okay.
But I mean, they're
So
not
it
gonna
is
care if you use like. I mean, I don't think they're really gonna care about the commas on your LSAT argumentative writing
right,
sample. But
right.
I think it's just like
What
the
is
little
important?
things.
Yeah, I think what's important when it comes to your initial question about, well, a smart student is going to get help on their personal
Mm-hmm.
statement. So, what if it looks different than their
Yeah.
argumentative writing sample? And I think the idea is as long as it's the same voice,
Mm-hmm.
as long as I don't think, how on earth did this person write that
Yeah.
personal statement and then this disaster of an argument writing? So it's more about, I think they'll care that they can see what you write when it's pure writing.
Yeah.
That being said, no lawyer, unless you've done something terribly wrong, no lawyer is going to have only 35 minutes to construct their argument. Okay, you're going to have tools to help you. So your personal statement is a better reflection of what you're capable of and what your work will look
Yeah.
like when you're actually working in the field. So of
Right.
course that's going to be more important. It just, I think, can't be glaringly different, like
Yeah.
you don't know how to spell words or like serious grammatical mistakes that weren't present in your personal statement. This only means take this time, as a warning. You're forewarned that if there are grammar issues, you have. If you don't know John and me versus John and I, if you don't know it's with a comma and it's without a comma, this is your time. Take a little bit of time in your LSAT prep. Take away a little bit of time from reading comp, a little bit of time from logical reasoning to study grammar because you know this is going to be part of the exam that's not scored yet but will be soon, and that will be important,
Yes. Oh,
more important than it ever was.
I'll also say
So
if you're really concerned,
yeah.
and you haven't started working with us on your essays, you just like come on in, and
Yep.
I will tell you if there are like large, glaring, like like I never remember this one girl. She just sent me her whole personal statement. It's just like one long block, and I was like, where are the paragraphs,
Yeah.
sweetheart? And she was like, oh, I didn't know you were supposed to use paragraphs, like unless it was a
Oh,
research paper. And I was like, oh. Well, let me just tell you, in all of your
You
writing,
should.
you know what? That she didn't know. She didn't know she was a good student. She had a good GPA. You know what? And I don't know. No one told her, but she made it really far. So I was like, that's fine. In all of your writing, for anything, emails, even
Yeah.
emails, we have to have some paragraphs. And that just, but all she needed was someone to tell her that, right? And it was
So the
never an issue.
takeaway from today's conversation is paragraphs and sandwiches. All right, guys,
Paragraphs are so
paragraphs and
important.
sandwiches. Yeah.
Is there anything else that, if someone is thinking about the writing, argumentative writing sample,
Yeah.
any other really big glaring to dos or to don'ts? I mean, we talked about being
Yeah,
respectful.
right. So I think obviously being respectful, but also some people I know with their personal statements, they like to try to get very creative. And it is, of course, creativity is wonderful. Um, but with this being such a new format, I would veer toward more conservative approach. Um, so, for example, I would not submit my argumentative writing in the form of a series of haikus or, in iambic pentameter. While that might be very impressive to someone, it's going to be a gimmick to someone else. So, really just stay conservative, write an essay that is solid. You're not trying to knock anyone's socks off with your creativity. Mention in your introductory paragraph, this is the issue, this is the side I fall on. In your next couple of paragraphs, support why you believe in the side you believe in. Devote one or two paragraphs to why, although the other side may have a good point with this and this, still it's countered by such and such. And then a final paragraph to sum up. And in all of those, use transition sentences, make them each a delicious sandwich. But there's no reason to try to change a sandwich assignment into a pizza. You don't need to be that creative. That would probably be my final advice for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so, so, so much. And you are going to be a panelist in our third annual Break into Law conference, which, if you don't know about our free virtual conference, you can go to breakintolawconference.org. We also will put the direct registration link in the show notes and in the description if you're watching the YouTube video or if you're listening to the podcast. Did I mention it's free? Yeah, okay, great. It's free. 3 days of amazing panels, including Mena. We have a panel on equity and law school admissions. We have a phenomenal keynote speaker this year. I can't even say who it is yet, but ooh,
Oh,
ooh, ooh.
I
You
don't
need
even know. Okay.
listen. Ooh, ooh.
Okay.
I'm so excited. I will say that I met her. She is on the Forbes 50 over 50 list. She is
Okay.
a phenomenal Black woman, and it is going to be everything. So I'm so excited. I won't say any more than
Is it
that.
Michelle Obama?
It's not Michelle Obama.
That would be awesome. But there are plenty of other awesome women that I would be looking forward to as well. Anyway,
It's not
it's
Michelle.
been an absolute pleasure.
It's
It is
not Michelle.
always a pleasure. I know,
Yes.
I know. I'm just joking.
But I have to gas you up because people need to come to your session. We also have a law school fair on Saturday. We have a career fair for current students on Sunday. We have panels on different areas of the law. We have breakout rooms with current law school students this year. So Mina, I just want to say thank you. Where can people find you though before the conference? Of course, like TikTok, Twitter,
Yeah.
all the things, X,
Yeah,
Facebook.
fantastic. So the best place to reach me is at my website, which is lsatlogicpro.com. There you can sort of find out about my background, my history, my philosophy toward the test, and you can also see my fee structures, packages, and schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation, which I encourage people to do, whether, if you're interested in tutoring, that's the best way to figure out if we're a good match for each other. But also, if you're just curious about what resources you should be using, if you just want to chat with someone who has put a lot of work into researching the LSAT and just chat about your plan. Is it a good plan? Is this what I should be doing? I know that the LSAT is overwhelming at times. So I'm really here to be a resource to people as much as I possibly can. So that's the best place to reach me. But you can also find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and TikTok. All of them are at LSAT Logic Pro. Otherwise, I will see you guys at the conference. It'll be my third year participating in the conference. It's always a blast. I'll be talking about mastering the LSAT, tips and tricks to make sure you're on the right track and headed toward 170 plus.
Woo! 170 plus. Thank you so,
170
so,
plus.
so much. Mena, we are so excited. And guys, make sure that you share this video, like and subscribe, rate and review, follow, all of the things. Sharing is caring. So if you have a friend that's taking the test and they didn't send you this video, send it to them so that they know and can be informed and we can all succeed together. If you have questions about the test or if you have questions for Mena or want to get in touch with her, definitely reach out to her or just comment below. Ask us any questions. We'd be happy to answer. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Mena.